Hello, my name's Loretta, and I'm 77 years old. That's right, 77, and I'm a fan of the booth. Sinister One, Keith Hayes. That's right, my favorite. He's like a adorable Sammy Davis Jr., but for the new age kids. And everybody that loves sports, because I love all that New England sports. The Boston Celtics, the New England Patriots. I don't even give a damn about the Jets or the Giants.
Enjoy treating your customers like a piece of shit, because that's how I felt when I went to the Alamo Draft House. Okay? You know what? I didn't know that I wasn't supposed to text in your little crappy-ass theater. It was too f***ing dark in that place for me to find my seat, alright? I was using my phone as a flashlight to get to my f***ing seat. So excuse me for using my phone in USA, United States of America, where you are free to text in a theater. I was not aware that I couldn't text in your theater, all right? I've texted in all the other theaters in Austin, and no one ever gave a fuck about what I was doing with my fucking phone, all right? And it was on silent. It wasn't on loud. It wasn't bothering anybody. You guys obviously were being assholes to me. And I'm sure that's what you do, you know, to rip people off. You take my money, and then you throw me out. You know, I will never be coming back to your Alamo Draft House or whatever. I'd rather go to a regular theater where people are actually polite. And, you know, I'm going to tell everyone about how you are. And I'm pretty sure you guys are being on purpose. So thanks for making me feel like a customer. Thanks for taking my money.
If we're honest, who wants to roll less travel? It's harder to teach us. Who wants the difficult route?
If you support safety in our schools, you will support the National Guard to come in here and keep our students safe.
People say, these students have changed. These students are lazy.
Your children aren't learning disability, they lazy.
Get students engaged so they don't want to skip classes, they want to be in their classrooms.
There are teachers in this profession who should not be teachers. There are teachers in this profession who don't care about children.
These students don't want to learn. No, the adults have changed. See, the parents don't have the back of the teachers.
He ain't slow. He ain't got no learning problem. His parents didn't give him a foundation.
Young people as a nation, we sorely need the depth and breadth of your intelligence, character, and also your clarity.
Think about, in particular, the history of people that look like me who are getting cheated.
So if you're asking me right now as an educator, what's wrong with these kids? There's nothing wrong with them.
Teachers are the most important people in the world.
They're whimpering in fear, and we're sitting here scared of them.
Because if they get it right, they'll change the world, because they're in charge of the most important resource, and that's our children.
met you, there was peace unknown. I set out to get you with a fine-tooth comb. I was soft inside. There was something going on.
Shaolin shadow boxing and the Wu-Tang sword style. If what you say is true, the Shaolin and the Wu-Tang could be dangerous. Do you think your Wu-Tang sword can defeat me?
On guard. I'll let you try my Wu-Tang style.
Same with you. Same with you.
Shaolin shadow boxing and the Wu-Tang sword style. If what you say is true, the Shaolin and the Wu-Tang could be dangerous. Do you think your Wu-Tang sword can defeat me?
On guard. I'll let you try my Wu-Tang style.
Same with you. Same with you.
Shaolin shadow boxing and the Wu-Tang sword style. If what you say is true, the Shaolin and the Wu-Tang could be dangerous. Do you think your Wu-Tang sword can defeat me?
On guard. I'll let you try my Wu-Tang style.
Same with you. Same with you.
Oscar Mike Radio is a proud podcast partner of Reach Across America Radio, heard every Thursday at 11 a.m. and Sunday at 8 a.m. Eastern. They're also big supporters of the nonprofit I Got Your Six, Two Lives at Once. And with every wreath you sponsor through Oscar Mike Radio, $5 goes back to this great organization dedicated to making a difference in the lives of veterans, law enforcement, firefighters, and first responders battling PTSD. Two Lives at Once pairs these brave men and women together with dogs rescued from kill shelters. In this way, two lives are saved at the same time by saving each other. Donate now. Go to reachacrossamerica.org/Oscar Mike Radio to help. That's reachacrossamerica.org/Oscar Mike Radio.
Master Yoda I am, and listen you must to hulazoom.com.
Cruella, how we gonna bring in this new year? The folks online miss us. We're not. What the hell you mean, bitch? Don't call my phone and wish me a happy nothing. You mind the business that pays you. You hear me? You know what? I'm gonna get off the phone with you, cause this ain't the way I wanna bring in my new year. New year, new me, heifer. You said that last year, bitch. Hey, Edna, do you have any New Year's resolutions? To find out how you keep getting past the block button. Ta-ta. Happy New Year, Pocahontas. I'm so happy for all your success. New year, new us to the new year. Bitch, I don't celebrate this colonized new year. The new year for us starts in the spring during the equinox. But a lot of these unbuttered biscuits wouldn't know about the equinox, and I don't have time to teach them. John, you do it. They're your unseasoned people anyway. You know, white people aren't responsible for every racist bad thing that has happened in this world. Who said that? Who said that? Child, who said that? Listen, don't y'all text my phone on New Year's either. Y'all have a happy whatever the fuck y'all doing. Yes.
Can you dig it? Can you dig it?
Yeah.
Can you dig it?
Like some motherfucking action heroes in it. Yeah.
This is blasphemy. This is madness. This is a proof.
Step into the twisted mind of my literature, designed to get into the depths of your mind, administer sickness around to mimic the likes of snuff cinema. What you must get into, you're nothing but pups. Remember you Homer and Happy Simpson, son. Nothing Ithaca. Talkers like the northern half of Korea's peninsula. ESP your island like the booth, something sinister. ESP your island like the booth, something sinister. ESP your island like the booth, something sinister.
All right, it's your boy Sinister One broadcasting live from the City of Champions. You are watching The Booth, January 7th. Happy New Year, 2025. Let's see how fast this year goes by compared to friggin' last year. We're actually waiting for Ken to show up in the chat. Hopefully everything's okay. Rob is already here with me. It's the first show of 2025. I got to give a big thanks to everybody supporting the show. One of the things I looked at was the analytics for this show over the off season. I got to thank everybody who's watching this show worldwide. We've got USA, of course, is at the top of the list for people watching the show, but we're pretty big. We've got a pretty big 10% following in, believe it or not, India, which is good. But I think that has to do with a lot of the fact that a lot of your internet software and stuff is out of that area. And then we've got some people in China and the Philippines. I already know who's listening to us and watching us in the Philippines. And it's good to see all of these people across the world watching The Booth and Sinister One Productions. And, again, we're here. First show out the gate is first Tuesdays. Michael Douglas Bretto, MDB Electronics. If you got a controller that's got to be fixed, let them fix it for you. Limited lifetime warranty is available. Also, Veana Marie's music, 494,000 streams available now online. Tactical Target Systems, that's where I get those zombie targets from. And I Love Boston Sports. Pritch Please is the hoodie and shirt that he's got. That's real popular out there right now, all over the news. Kimberly Ann Empowerment Photography. Ladies, if you want to take some pictures that you never thought you'd feel comfortable taking, these are the pictures that you can go and take. Also, Underwatch Protective Services, Mobile Patrol, Foot Patrol, Unarmed Guards, Armed Guards, Event Security, Private Security. Reach out to Underwatch Protective Services. And before we get into the news booth, I'm going to let my guy R Squared say his openings for 2025.
Hey, good night, everybody. I always look forward to the first Tuesday of the month. As Keith was just saying, 2025 looks like it's going to be a whirlwind of a year. So stay tuned. Let's get ready to rock.
Yeah, hold on. Ken actually just reached out to me. Hold on tight real quick here. He needs me to send him the Zoom code because he... Okay, I got to send him.
Why does he lose it every month?
He's not at his computer and he's not at a place where it usually is. So I've got to send it to him to wherever he's at so he can access it. And then let's see if we get him on. While we're waiting for Ken to come in here, let me get into the news booth. I've got to actually thank my guy, Travis Partington of Oscar Mike Radio, for landing support from the Fight Camp system. We did an unboxing this weekend. We're going to be releasing that video. And also this week, here comes Ken. Let me just bring Ken in here. Let me be right back real quick. Let me just get Ken in here.
Flame made that beat. I smoke, I drink, I do my thing.
All right. We got Ken in here with us now. Ken, I let Rob say what he wanted to say to open up 2025. I'm going to let you say what you got to have to say real quick before we open up 2025.
Well, wishing everyone a happy and safe 2025. Hopefully it's more civil than 2024. Not holding my breath, but that's about it.
Yeah, we've got a lot of stuff going on here. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about in the news booth, and a lot of stuff. A lot of people in the chat. What's up, Margaret? How's it going? Mark Powers is in the chat. What's going on, everybody? We're here. We're holding out 2025. We're in the news booth. I just thanked Travis Partington for landing support from the Fight Camp system. Also, you're going to be seeing my guy, R Squared from the corridor. He's going to be linking up with Travis Partington. They're going to have a really, really good, very important discussion this week on some of the things that have gone on in the news this week with veterans and PTSD. We've talked about in this show. It's part of the news booth tonight, but I don't want to burst their bubble because they're going to come at it from a completely different way. Also, in the entertainment booth, let's get into the entertainment booth. In the entertainment booth, Veana Marie's music is out there. We performed New Year's Eve. Well, she performed New Year's Eve at All Triangle in Hyannis. She performed the Cypher Come Around mashup that I did for her. Went over well. So thanks to everybody who came out and showed support for that. Also in the entertainment booth, Mary J. Blige is producing Family Fair, which is a biopic film series featuring Lisa from the Cult Jam and Gloria Gaynor. And you're probably wondering, why am I mentioning this on the show as part of news? Because if Ken remembers correctly, Ken and I at one time when we first started the booth, we were at WXBR, WBET Radio in 1460, and I was able to link up with the PR person for Gloria Gaynor, who was celebrating the 40th anniversary of the song I Will Survive. Huge song. Major song. They sent us copies all autographed and everything. The sad thing is that I had to interview her for this song, and she completely obliterated me on the show because she was tainted at the fact that she didn't write the song. So she's not making any money off the song I Will Survive because she only gets money for performing the song and doing interviews. And I caught her on the app. Even Ken was like, Jesus. It was probably one of the worst moments of being an interviewer in my life. Ken even offered, I remember Ken offered to take me out to lunch the next day because it was that bad.
It was sad. It was kind of sad. It wasn't exactly like it was your fault either. I didn't know she didn't write the song either. I assumed she was a co-writer. I had no idea. God,
yeah, she didn't write it. And that's the thing, people, you don't know this. If you don't write the song, writers get 80% of the royalty. She was just a performer of the song, and she was absolutely upset at the fact that she had to come on this radio station and promote this album. If I could find that interview, I will post it on our site. And
No, you don't. No.
Last night, WWE Raw premiered on Netflix. We will be talking about that on Turnbuckles and Spilt Liquor podcast tonight at 9:30. The big thing that came out of this last night was MAGA, Hogan, come out last night to what he thought was going to be an accepting WWE wrestling crowd. And guess what happened, people? Even Jimmy Hart was like, "You're on your own, brother." Hogan got literally booed out the building. For those who don't remember, MAGA poster child Hulk Hogan was at the MAGA convention for the Republicans, and he's been the big backer, Trump, and all this stuff. He was obliterated last night, which surprised the hell out of me that it was that bad. It was that bad. If you haven't seen it,
Stop you right there. I'm sorry. Has anyone ever looked at the demographics of the people who like this iteration of professional wrestling? I'm saying this iteration because Rob and I knew we're old school. We like the older professional wrestling, not the crap they have now. If you look at that demographic, it is very young. If you look at the maggots, they tend to break older, much older. So why is everyone surprised? The demographic that supports MAGA is not the demographic who's watching Raw. End of story. Dumbest thing they could have done.
Yeah, it was bad. It was real bad. I actually felt kind of bad for him. You know, he came out to the Real American theme song, the flag, and all that, and it was bad. It was horrifying. Let's get into the sports booth. As you guys can see, the new stuff going on there. Doug John Macedo is in the chat. What's up, Andrea? In the sports booth. Big ups to MattieC from MattieC Sports. He has started a running group called South Shore Flyers. So if you're looking to run and get ready for marathons and road races, please reach out to MattieC. Also, big debate, big discussion here in New England. Patriots win the game 23-16. Gerard Mayo is fired within 15 minutes after the Patriots win, beating Buffalo. There's a lot of stuff there being said about Gerard Mayo being set up by the Krafts. Bob Kraft came out and just said that, you know, he hired him and he made the mistake. Bob Kraft is a good guy. He's putting this all on him. He's saying, I made a mistake. I feel like anybody that would have been hired after Belichick was going to fail anyway. It was the same thing with Parcells. When Parcells left here, you know, it was the same thing. You can't be a guy in another guy's shadow. Nope, everybody's going to scrutinize everything you did. I also felt that this day and age of the NFL, I feel you need to do college. That's always been my opinion. Yeah, there have been some coaches that have had some success being a first-year coach in the NFL, but I don't know. I don't know how you guys feel. I feel like every head coach should do some type of tenure coaching at the college level first before becoming an NFL coach. I think it should be mandatory. I'm going to start with you, Oscar. What do you think? Because you've gone through a ton of coaches up there in New York with the Giants. What do you think?
I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. There are a lot of college coaches, including legendary ones like Nick Saban, that suck at the NFL level. So there is no connection. They're two different games. I think, you know, it's when you hire a coach, you're looking for somebody that's going to be consistent with the system you have or is going to build you a new system. I mean, that's why you have these interviews so that everybody can get on the same page about where the team is going. And sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. A lot of times somebody could be a great coach, but not on every team. So it's got to be the right fit at the right time. You know, while we're talking about it, I'll just say this real quick and I'll defer to the two of you. I thought it was a mistake to fire Jared Mayo after 1 year. No coach can turn a team around after 1 year unless the team was already built. If somebody leaves in the middle of a multi-year successful team, then anybody can take over the team because it's already hitting on all cylinders. That wasn't the case. Mayo came in, as the Krafts well knew, the entire team well knew, and the fan base well knew. You guys talked about it, you know, last year, that this was going to be a rebuilding year. He seems to have been a decent coach to do that. And so, sorry, Ken, didn't mean to steal your thunder, but my point in saying that was, you know, it takes a couple of years to rebuild a team, to bring in a system, to get the players, to do everything. And so if you're going to fire your coach after a year, and there are teams that fire coaches every year for a few years, and then they're a mess, they're a disaster. I'm not saying the Patriots are going in that route. I thought it was wrong. of the crafts to do that. I thought that he deserved at least a second year. I think, a new coach, if you're not willing to give the coach 2 to 3 years, then you have wrong expectations. Unless the team is already fully built, then maybe, when you promote from within or somebody who knows the system, and so I'm going to contrast that with the Giants, right? I was thrilled that they kept Brian Daboll for one more year because, yes, he did some things wrong, that the organization is a mess. We've talked about this on the show. I'll hold my thoughts about it. Remember, I said the Maras, the ownership team, needs to leave. That's how you fix the Giants. And I still stand by that. But I do agree with John Mara keeping Brian Daboll for one more year because it wasn't his decision not to get a quarterback. It wasn't his decision to have the worst offensive line in football for a few years. And so that's what the Patriots are facing. They had a pretty bad offensive line this year. Well, you can't just snap your fingers and fix that. You got to bring in the talent. So that's my point. And so I'm thrilled that Brian Daboll gets another year. Hopefully they bring him a quarterback to see what he can do. If not, then they'll reassess. Same thing for the Patriots. I mean, I don't know who they're going to bring in. I think everybody thinks it's going to be Vrabel. Who knows? Good luck to whoever they bring in. But I wouldn't want to go work for somebody who's going to fire me after 1 year when it's inevitable.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ken.
Go ahead. Well, Rob said exactly all of my points as
Go ahead.
knowing that he's so good at this. But no, you can't fire a coach after 1 year. I'm sorry. I think there should be a rule in the NFL that all head coaches are given at least 2. I think it should be 3 years before you can fire them unless there is blatant misconduct. You can't take an organization like the Patriots, who basically lost everybody after Tom Brady left, and expect them to go become a Super Bowl contention or a playoff contention team after 1 year. I'm sorry, that's impossible. I do not think coaching on the college level necessarily translates into coaching on the pro level. A lot of coaches have done it. A lot of coaches have failed. Again, the college game is totally different. One of the most important things about the college game is you turn over your team entirely every 4 years. Maybe 5 if you've got a fifth year, if you've got a redshirt freshman. That's a lot different. So your window in the college game is very much narrower than in the program. You can develop players over a longer period of time. The other thing is you got a lot of teams in the college game who simply aren't up to muster. Let's face it. I don't care if they're in, Division III or Division Champions League. You got some teams are going to be perennial embarrassments. You don't have that in the NFL for the most part. Yeah, you got the Jets, who are a dumpster fire year after year since '69. But most of the time, you got teams that come and go, which is different than the college game. Last but not least, I think that the idea of having a general manager and head coach, 2 separate positions, is wrong. If I may quote Bill Parcells, if you want me to cook you dinner, you got to let me choose the ingredients. I think that the head coach has got to be the GM as well, because unless he knows, or maybe we'll have a female head coach, I don't know, she knows who she's getting, that's how you build a team. So I think that was totally wrong on behalf of Bob Kraft. Bob Kraft was smart with Bill Belichick. Bob Kraft recruited Bill Belichick, and then he let Bill Belichick run the football operations side of the house, while Bill Belichick took care of the business side of the house. I'm sorry. Well, Kraft took care of the business side of the house. That's what he's got to do. The owners like Jerry Jones, who think they're football geniuses, are the ones that, he's done a great job of building the Cowboys brand, and I hate Cowboys, I hate Jerry Jones, but let's face it, when is the last time they were relevant from a football perspective? Okay? We're going on 31 years. Just to give you an idea how long ago 31 years is. The last time the Cowboys were relevant was 1994. If you were in 1994 and you had to go back 31 years to when the last time the Cowboys were relevant, that would be before the NFL-AFL merger. Okay, that's how long ago it is in actual years. So I think the Patriots made a mistake. I firstly do not think Grable's a great match. I think he's all sizzle, no steak. But then what do I know? Unfortunately, Bob Kraft hasn't bothered to call me for my opinion. I'm a little disappointed in the man. But, hey, I'll learn to live with it.
Yeah, the Pats had a ton of missing pieces this year to be successful. They had a great position in the draft. They've got an easy schedule next year coming up. I would have liked to have seen them keep Gerard for a second year. Sometimes I feel like teams make that knee-jerk reaction based on the fan base. I think that this is one of those things where sometimes you need to separate. You know, after last week's loss at home, you know, there was a big chant of fire Mayo at the end of the game at Gillette. And, you know, there were several players who were very upset at the fan base for that. And Kraft pretty much gave the fans what they wanted. Most people who know sports, most sports analysts, they're not really happy with this because, like we've all said, it takes a year or two. If the Patriots had fired Bill Belichick after his first year, because he went 2-12, right? That year, that first year he took over the team.
Actually, so Jerome Mao actually has a better record in his first year than Bill Belichick did in his.
So this firing coaches after one season is, I don't agree with it. Because your franchise is based on that. You're never going to get. I feel like there's something really bad behind the scenes as to what maybe led to this. Some are saying it's because some are rumoring that he was told to not have this game go the way it did, so they didn't lose that first round. That's going to be a discussion later on in the sports booth coming up, and your thoughts on that. But it sucks. And who are they going to fill it with? Yes, Vrabel is the front runner in the rumor mill. But we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. Also in the sports booth, let me pull this up here. The playoffs are now set. Wild Card weekend is this weekend. Let me get you guys' thoughts on this. Starting on Saturday, we have the Chargers taking on the Texans. Texans playing good ball all season. I don't even think any of us had saw the Texans making the playoffs this year. But I like the Chargers in this first game. I think the Chargers have more experience. Justin Herbert is a great quarterback. They're playing good ball right now. I like the Texans in this first Saturday matchup. Let's go with R² here.
I like the Chargers. I think they're playing better football right now. I think they have a better team than the Texans. I mean, look, we're in the playoffs. Anybody can win. Home field advantage matters. Texans have it. But the Chargers have proven that they can play on the road. I just think it's a better matchup for them. I was happy to see the Chargers move up a seed in the final week so that they would play the Texans rather than the Ravens. I don't think anybody wants to go to Baltimore right now. So I think that's the harder game. So I'm saying Chargers.
All right, Ken, your thoughts?
Look, I had the Texans occupying the cellar this year. I thought there was no way in hell they could even see the playoffs, much less make them. I think the Chargers are a better team logically, so therefore I'm going to be wrong, and the Texans are going to win. So I'm going to pick the Texans.
All right, and the second Saturday game, you know, me and Ken, we've always talked about this on this show. There's certain games that happen in the NFL that are just absolute bloodbath games. It doesn't matter what the records is. It doesn't matter where or when it takes place. The game is always a bloodbath. And that right here is the Baltimore Ravens against the Pittsburgh Steelers in a wild card weekend game. Look, call security, call whoever in for this game. My feeling is, though, out of this bloodbath, it's Baltimore. I'm taking Baltimore all day. Ken?
Look, first of all, people forget the Baltimore Ravens were the old Cleveland Browns of the AFC Central. That's how old I remember before they came the AFC North. And back in the 70s and early 80s, Cleveland and Boston, Pittsburgh, I mean, it was like call out the riot squad. Literally, you had guys in riot gear out there because the fans were going to tear each other apart as opposed to the players. So it was always great football. And nothing has changed. Now it's Pittsburgh versus Baltimore. All I can say is the only people that are going to make out well in this game are the bookies and the local hospitals. But all I can say is, no, Baltimore is on fire. They're not going after the court. They're not only going after the quarterback, they're going after his family. So yeah, Ravens an easy win.
Squid?
Yeah, I think this game is going to be disappointing. I think the Ravens going to walk all over it. Pittsburgh was looking really good for much of the season, but they fizzled. I guess it's some injuries perhaps, but Russell Wilson is not playing that great right now. The team isn't playing great right now. Yeah, they have a good history. These teams know each other. They've played on the road. It's not going to be a strange matchup or anything like that. But I don't know what happened to Pittsburgh. They've crapped out the last few weeks. I don't see them going into Baltimore and putting up a fight. I just don't.
All right. Also in this matchup, we've got Sunday. Our first matchup is the Broncos and the Bills. I hate to say this, you got to beat the Bills. Got to beat the Bills. You're not going into that stadium. I'm sorry. I got Buffalo all day. Squared.
Yeah, I mean, I would pick the Bills. They're clearly a much better team. I mean, Denver has a good defense. They've showed some good, some good ability throughout the season. They had a couple of good wins. Obviously the last game of the season was a walkover. So, Kansas City, that was embarrassing. I understand they were resting their players, but that was an awful thing to see. So I don't know what that says about Denver. They got lucky that they even made the playoffs under the circumstances. I don't see them going into Buffalo to win, but I will say this: the Bills have a history of crapping out in the playoffs, and anything could happen. But I guess I'd still put my money on Buffalo one more week.
Ken?
Prior to last Sunday, I would have said Denver has a snowball's chance in hell of winning, and I put their chances right around me or Rob being elected Pope at the next conclave of the Cardinals. And being that we're both Jewish, you can give what the chances are. However, after that embarrassment last Sunday against our Patriots, and Rob is correct as usual, they have a long history of crapping out in the playoffs. I'm not so sure about the Bills. If Denver gets on their medication and takes their Zoloft and the Prozac, they may have a shot. These are both of these teams are cold weather teams. They're playing in Buffalo. I understand, good advantage for Buffalo, but Denver does well on the road, better than most teams in the NFL. I am giving the edge to Buffalo, but by a hair, mind you. I am talking by a hair only because Denver has managed to disappoint me through my entire life. My first team is Patriots, but Denver's always been a close second.
All right, in the next matchup, we have the Green Bay Packers taking on the Eagles. The Eagles are playing good ball. The problem is when they don't show up, that's when it's horrible. I think they show up for this game. I don't think the Packers have a chance. I'm taking the Eagles on this one. Squid.
I don't know if Jordan Love is playing in this game. I haven't seen yet. And so that makes a big difference in how the Packers are going to do. I would say the Eagles playing at home. They got a rest last week. I would give it to the Eagles at this point. I think they're still a team to beat. I recognize everybody's looking at Detroit and Minnesota, but the Eagles can beat anybody. It's like the Bills. Will they show up to play? I think they will this week.
Ken?
If the Eagles bus gets lost on the way to the stadium, then maybe Green Bay has a shot. No way. Eagles all the way. They're going to stomp on this, and it's going to be ugly with a capital U.
And here we go. Tom Brady is not with the Bucs anymore, but the Bucs make the playoffs. Mike, what's his? I forget his last name now, but he, had a great game, broke the record. I would love to see him up here, but the story here is the Washington football franchise is now back in the playoffs. They'll be taking on the Tampa Bay Bucs. I hate to say this, but they need to put everything that's been happening to them behind them. I like Washington in this game over Tampa Bay. I think Washington goes in and takes this win. Ken?
Look, I have been wrong about Tampa Bay every time I predict them. Every time I predict them to lose, they win. Every time I predict them to win, they lose. Every time I predict them to have a great season, they, light themselves on fire and then jump into a pool of gasoline. So whatever guess I'm going to go was wrong. So that in mind, I'm picking the Commanders because I want Tampa Bay to win. So I'm picking the Commanders to win.
Squid?
Baker Mayfield's having a great season. I think that, that team they're good on both sides of the ball. I think that Tampa Bay could technically come and play against anybody. They do get to host the game, which is a big advantage for them. But Washington has really been impressive this season. I think Washington wins the game unless their lack of playoff experience, gets them a little bit unnerved. If the coach doesn't have them ready to play, if they're in their heads, then Tampa Bay is going to walk on them. But I do think that Washington, if they're prepared, they can go down there and win. I know I said it for the Chargers, but otherwise we've been going with the home team. I think this is the best road matchup, for the road team to win of the whole weekend.
Yeah, there's some good games this weekend, and then Monday night is going to be either the Vikings or Detroit and the Rams are set for Monday night. You know, Detroit, that's right now, Detroit for me is the team to beat NFC. I think they're the team that's going to go all the way in the NFC. Vikings could be that team to upset them, but Detroit is playing on all cylinders. So I look for Tampa Bay. I look for Detroit to just make their moves. Who do you guys like that's sitting on the outside?
Detroit has obviously performed an exorcism in Ford Field this year. Thank God, after 40 years. They are on fire. I don't know what they're feeding their offensive line, but whatever it is, can I get some? No question about it. Minnesota is a factory of sadness. I feel sorry for Minnesota fans because they are a loyal bunch, and Minnesota loves to bring them to the edge of climax and then pull out. I mean, they just do this every year. Their fans, they like to walk up to them and punch them in the proverbial thing that's located above your knees, below your stomach. I'm trying to clean it up for you. But yeah, Detroit's got they're on fire, and no one's going to put it out anytime soon.
Squid, your thoughts?
Yeah, I was impressed with the way Detroit manhandled the Vikings the other night. And that was what I was watching to see. How would that game at the very end of the season, when everybody else is resting, how would Detroit come out and really fight for number one seed? And the way that they played tells me that they're for real. So I think Detroit is the team to beat in the entire postseason.
Yeah, I like them. AFC is still a toss-up for me. I know everybody's on the Kansas City bandwagon, but I can't. There's some things there with Kansas City that I don't like. They're just like Buffalo right now. They're not consistent ball, and they've had some help from the refs. So right now, NFC is my sure clear cut is Detroit taking this all the way. The AFC, I think I'll have a clearer decision after this weekend's games. I'm leaning a little bit more towards this being Baltimore. We'll see what happens. I think the addition of Derrick Henry down in Baltimore has taken a lot of pressure off Lamar Jackson. And I think that is the key to Lamar this season. There's a lot of big. What's interesting about this season? The teams that we are seeing in the wild cards had some big off-season moves, like the Eagles. The Eagles suffered with a defensive game last year, but they added, the running back game has been boosted up this year down in Philly. So these additions that were made in the offseason to the teams, we're seeing this. We're seeing this, and it's going to be an exciting wild card weekend. Let's get into the legal booth. And there's the new graphic right there for the legal booth, created by AI, Sinister One Productions. And in the legal booth here in Massachusetts. Oh, this cold is killing me. The Dayquil is starting to wear off. I knew I should have. In the legal booth, Governor Healy is ordering inspections of all state shelters after an undocumented immigrant was staying in a Revere shelter with an AR-15. And look, people, I get it. $1 million in drugs sounds like a lot in the news. When people put it out there, it sounds like he's sitting there like friggin' a drug lord, $1 million, Ken, let him know. $1 million doesn't have to be this big pile of Godfather Scarface.
Okay. Stop right there. I would like to know, when they throw out these numbers, it's $1 million worth of drugs. What are you basing on that? Where's the market where I can go to get an evaluation of how much my drugs are worth? Now, first of all, are you talking about $1 million worth of drugs street level, means it's been cut and distributed, or are you talking about wholesale?
Thank you.
Are you talking about fentanyl, cocaine, marijuana? Because I'm telling you right now, $1 million worth of marijuana is going to take up a lot more space than $1 million worth of fentanyl.
It was fentanyl. Pure. I believe it was fentanyl he had.
Okay. So you're talking maybe, if you're assuming that's uncut, if you're assuming it's pure fentanyl, hasn't been stepped on, as we say in the street, and assuming you're using the gross estimation what you're using right now, and you're assuming it's 70% pure or higher, which is what the street value is, you're talking maybe $1 a couple of kilos. And it could be less. Because here's the thing. Fentanyl is such a powerful drug. The amount of fentanyl that actually is pure fentanyl that's mixed in is so incredibly small, you wouldn't believe it. There's a number of cases, I'm not going to bore everyone right now, concerning how you weigh drugs. For example, under Massachusetts, in order to be charged with trafficking, it's got to be more than 18 grams but less than 36. And the defense attorney has been screaming for years, how do you determine the weight? Because what they used to do in the old days was they take the bag and stick it on the scale, whenever the number popped up. We argued, no, first of all, you got to take the weight of the bag out, which we won on that argument, which, believe it or not, can be up to 3 grams. Number two, and then you got to say, well, what else is in there? Well, most of drugs, for those of you who are, don't know this, are cut with baby laxative, baking soda, or some other substance, some non-inert substance. And most of the time, the majority of the substance found in the bag is the inert stuff. And we've been arguing for years, you should take that out and only weigh the pure drugs. Ooh. So, and also the question of fentanyl, believe it or not, the market has crashed. The fentanyl 2 years ago was at a record high. Now it's crashed for a number of reasons, which I don't, if you want to get into, I will. But as for the other thing, would everyone stop using the term undocumented or illegal immigrant for the 412,000 times? If you are an immigrant, which means you have legal status to be here. And oh, by the way, he was documented. Apparently, he was a person, from what I'm hearing from this gentleman, was he was documented and then didn't show up for his processing hearing. And he was given a removal order in absentia. So he was documented, which meant he got inspected. What you're talking about is an e-leak or someone who enters without inspection. So I will now.
And that's the media. That's the media. Hold on, we got to go back here to the sports booth.
No, because look, the average person doesn't give a shit about any of that. The average person doesn't care if it was $1 million or not. The average person isn't going to be schooled in immigration law where they know the proper terms. That what people are concerned about, as the election demonstrated to us in a very plain way, is the problem that we have. Now, thankfully, I think it's good that this person was here properly. It's just he got a deportation order because he failed to meet his hearing or whatever. So that's fine. That's a different story than the original narrative. But what Governor Healy and the state is looking at now is, here we have all of these shelters being paid for by our tax dollars. And if there are concerns about whether people are staying there who don't qualify to be there, or who have military grade weapons or large quantities of narcotics, even smaller quantities of narcotics, then that's a problem, because you have no right to be there. Why aren't we doing a better job inspecting? That's a safety problem. That's a safety problem for everybody who is staying there, who is relying on the state shelter for a safe place to sleep, especially in this terrible weather. That is a significant safety liability for all the people who work there. That is a liability all around across the board. That's the problem. Now, this may be an isolated incident, in which case it's foolish to overreact to one thing. But if this is a systemic problem, then I'm glad that the state is going to take a look at this, because we need to fix it. These shelters need to be safe places, and people who don't belong there don't need to be there taking up space from people who do.
I would agree with that.
And
there are two problems you talk about. Number one is, how are you going to determine the people have the legal right to be there? One is documentation. Documentation costs money. How are these? Mm-hmm. And I work with this population. One of the biggest problems we have is these people don't have money to get documentation, because documentation ain't free. Number one. Number two, even people, most of these people don't have fixed addresses. They don't have social security cards. They don't have access to birth certificates. Like, for example, I had a client recently. We were trying to get him an ID. One of the problems is we couldn't get his birth certificate because he was born out of state. He was born in New York. And New York, to get a certified birth certificate, costs $50. Number one. Number two, you need a fixed address to send it to. You can't use a P.O. box. Number three, you cannot use a lawyer or a doctor to do it. You have to have a fixed address in order to send the birth certificate to. That can be verified. The problem is, this guy was homeless. He had no money. So how is he going to get a mass ID if he can't get his birth certificate from the state of New York?
That's the problem with the system.
That's the problem. People are going like, great, okay. And the other thing, I agree. These shelters are are incredibly underfunded and undermanned. I agree with you. If you think this is bad, this is no. Some guy walking in with an AR-15 and a bunch of drugs. That's an easy Tuesday. Talk about the people who have mental health breakdowns and attack other patients or attack staff or are sexually abused. If you think this is a problem, oh boy, son, you just opened yourself a
somebody brought that up and said that, you
want a simple answer? Spend more money on these shelters. Why don't you go to Residence Mass and suggest we want to spend more money on these shelters, see how popular that is?
Yeah, I mean, we've heard the questions. We've heard some of the stuff that's happened down here at the Mainspring House in Brockton. They've said if you heard some of the horror stories, and these are people that are residents, that were former residents. So let me roll back to the sports booth once again. There was a topic I wanted to touch base on because it was breaking news. So the Bengals head coach Zach Taylor is accusing Andy Reid of throwing this game against the Broncos. And here's the thing, people. I've watched a lot of NFL over the years, and I've watched a lot of sports over the years, and it's never been a secret for teams, when you get to this time of year, teams will sit players, teams will even lose games to better themselves in the seeding in the playoffs or for draft position. So for Zach Taylor to make this a big issue right now with Andy Reid sitting his players, making sure his players are healthy for this wild card, these playoffs coming up, and he's saying they allowed the other team to get in, the Broncos to make it in, blah, blah, blah. For me, I feel like just telling Zach Taylor, hey, you wouldn't have been in this position if you just won your games. If you had just won the games that you needed to win to get in, then you wouldn't have counted on Broncos winning or losing. Win your games. That's my opinion on this. I feel like losing a game at the end of the year in any sport to get better playoff seeding, better draft, I agree that's part of the sport. I'm sorry. I agree that if you're betting on the game, hey, that's betting is not really part of the sport itself. That's entertainment. But there is a strategy to this. We saw this with the Chicago Bulls, with as many championships that the Chicago Bulls won. How many times did we see in that Chicago Bulls legacy where during the playoffs, the Bulls did lose some games so they would get the better seeding? And it was all strategic. I'm going to start with R squared on this one because I feel it's part of the sport.
It is and it isn't. On the one hand, I totally understand the last game of the season, teams who don't need to win anymore, who have locked their playoff seeding or not, rest players because they don't want to risk injury. I get that. Now, is there a difference between the teams that have a first round bye? Because what are they resting for? They're going to have a couple of weeks off, and sometimes they come out and lose after that. So, you have to be careful whether that's a good strategy, because you've seen upsets because the team was too well rested. You know what I mean? So
I've seen it.
That's what they deserve then, if that's what they're going to do. The problem that I have with this is really twofold. On the one hand, I do respect that your goal is to win a Super Bowl. You're going to do whatever it takes. Like, for example, I was critical of the Eagles for not letting Saquon Barkley go for the record. At least give him the choice, right? He put up a hell of a season. He had been let's face it, he was with a struggling team the last few years. He finally got a shot this year. Why not give him the choice? How about let him play the first half or something where he had a shot? That's a meaningful record. That's a 40-year-old record. And that is he is a brilliant running back. And this would have been the icing on the cake of a really good story. And he was denied that. Now, what happens if Philadelphia loses to Green Bay? Well, there you go. You blew it, right? What happens if they destroy Green Bay? Then, what was that about? I don't know, right? And so from a fan base, you only get 8 or 9 home games a year, and you want to watch your team. You want to watch your players. When it comes down to the end of it, for example, I'm not saying that Kansas City intentionally wanted to lose so that Denver got in. They just didn't want to win the game because they rested their entire team. That was a second and third string team that was playing the entire game. There wasn't a single decent player out there for the Chiefs. So they weren't trying to, they would have done that no matter who they were playing. I think it's really unfortunate that the outcome of that game was that Denver gets in and Cincinnati doesn't, because I think Cincinnati's a good team. They were playing really good football. They finally turned it around. It would have been interesting to see what they could have done in the postseason. Nobody wanted to play them in the postseason. That's what it is. But so what should it be? I agree with you, Sinister One. Then you know what, Cincinnati, you shouldn't have lost 8 games. You shouldn't have lost 8 games. If you want to be in the postseason, you can't lose 8 games. And they lost some bad ones. They lost some good games where they put up a fight and lost. Okay, that's fine. That's going to happen. Most people don't go undefeated, but you can't lose 8 games and then cry that you didn't get into the postseason. So I'm really conflicted over this. I do think in a short season, and 17 games is only 17 games, every game matters. But at the same time, how do you deny a team that wants to be, ready to go to the postseason from doing that? That's their goal. So I don't know.
How do you? I hear this all the time. They're tanking games for better draft positions. They're tanking games to get players rested for the playoffs. Where do you draw the line? If I choose not to play a particular player in a particular game, what is the difference between making a strategic decision what's best for my team versus cheating? I mean, we all know about resting players. That's a foregone. The last game or two, depending on what sport you're in. If you're in baseball, they would rest their starters. They want fresh arms. Basketball. Okay, we've all accepted that's okay. But what line do we draw a line where it becomes, well, you violated the doctrine? Has anyone proved to me that anyone told their players to fumble the ball or not go for the first down? I'm using a football analogy only at this point. Do we have any proof of that? Because I don't see that. I don't believe in I just don't believe these players are egotists. They're pro athletes. They want to win all the time, and for no other reason, it makes them look better for the next contract comes up or the next team they want to play for. So I think it'd be very difficult for a team to tell its players to tank a game for either playoff reasons or draft picks. I think we saw that this past Sunday at when the Bills played the Patriots. Now, I know the Bills didn't put their prime players in for a good reason, but I don't think anyone told the Bills to. I won't describe what I'm trying to be polite here because I try not to get Sinister One demonetized over here. But let's face it, the Bills played like absolute dog. I don't think anyone told them to do that. They just didn't have the team. They didn't have the tools, and then the Patriots were playing for money, glory, or chicks, or whatever the reason. And I think it was people can criticize. Well, they gave up the first overall pick in the draft. Well, they still got number 4. So I think this losing games on the purpose at the end of the season, with a possible exception, I'm giving you the one out of resting players, is the urban myth. It's like the pop rocks exploding in your stomach if you drank Coke with it. I don't know if you remember that old story.
Right,
or the spider eggs in bubble gum. It's a great story that at the very surface looks logical, but when you dig it in, no, it's all bull crap.
And the player I was talking about, it was like Mike Evans. Mike Evans this weekend was allowed to stay in the game so he could get his bonus and break that record for the receiving yardage, which is something they did for him this weekend. So, there are things that happened at the end of the year. I see a lot of people make a noise about it, but like I said, in the case of Zach Taylor, win your games. Win your games. You had 8 losses, like R Squared said. You had 8 losses. Win your games.
You want to be bulletproof from either a lower team, you giving up at the first round seed, or a lower team getting in and shouldn't. Win your goddamn game. Go undefeated. There you go. Problem solved.
Let's get back into the legal booth. Our last topic. We actually did have breaking news, and the breaking news in the legal booth. There will be no delay in the sentencing of Donald Trump in this hush case. What are your thoughts on this? I don't think anything is going to happen with the sentencing. Squared.
Yeah, I mean, that was the initial decision. He's still appealing to the Court of Appeals of New York, which is their Supreme Court, their highest court. So we'll see if anything comes from that. So we don't really know yet. Also, this is the least of the cases, right? Yes, it was 34 counts, but collectively you're talking about a fine here. And so this is a distraction. I mean, he was convicted, he deserves to be sentenced. He's not going to jail because that was already off the table because it wasn't, met by the probation report. So you're talking about a fine. So yeah, go in there and pay your fine. First of all, Trump makes these things worse for himself because he can't ever admit even the slightest of flaws. He can't admit ever making even a minor error. And so, look, his legal teams have been brilliant across the board here in delay, making sure that these things didn't happen. But guess what? You're in state court. And, the Georgia court, obviously that case is a disaster now. That may never go forward at this point. So this is the only case that's ever going to go forward. So I would like to see finality. I would like to see a sentence. It isn't going to make anybody happy if it happens. But this is not a critically important case. The other cases were far more important.
Ken, you want to add on that?
Yeah, Rob's absolutely right. He probably won't get jail time. I would love to see this. Give him the sentencing on the 10th, the inauguration on the 21st. Give him a 10-day jail sentence, and then suspend the rest of it for 5 years, and give him a huge fine. Not going to happen. I'd love to see that. That way, I think a lot of people will be satisfied. I agree with what Rob said. This national security case and the Georgia case was much more important, but they're going no place, unfortunately. He's probably going to skate. That being said, you never know. I talked to another number of people who are much well versed in federal criminal law than I am. They said that, yeah, it's possible, although unlikely, they admit they could bring the case back after Trump leaves office, either in 2 or 4 years. But unlikely, but still a possibility. This is probably the only one we're going to get, and I would just love to, even if you got a suspended sentence, even if you got probation, I'd love to see that. I will say this, but the guidelines require 5 years. The pure guidelines say 5 years would be the appropriate sentence. I understand probation department gave a report not recommending jail time. That's their bailiwick, because a lot of the factors concerning the fact of his age, his lack of previous record, the violent and nonviolent nature of the crime, blah, 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 blah. Which is stuff I would have argued if I were his attorney. But
well, we're in the new year, 2025. Our political segment for the last 4 years has been the Biden bombshells, but we've now reverted back. We are back to the Trump Troubles name for our political segment, for we cover political topics. And there's a lot of head-shaking shit in tonight's segment. A lot of head-shaking shit that I'm just pissed off and can't believe. First of all, rest in peace to our former president, Jimmy Carter, who passed away a week ago. Today in Washington was the start of his funeral festivities. He was brought to Washington, where he will be on display for everybody to pay their respects. But then again, in typical Trump fashion, which pissed me off, and there's a lot of stuff in here that pissed me off this weekend about President Trump and why we're in this situation we are and why people act the way they do. President Trump was upset. He was upset at the fact that Carter's death is upstaging his coronation. Because that's all it is to him. It's a coronation. He is a guy that's an egotistical, narcissistic maniac. This is all about his coronation. He is upset at the fact that the flags are at half staff for the next 30 days. You know, something we all learned back in the 5th grade. You know, something that they taught us, that when the president dies, the flags go half staff for 30 days. This isn't set by the Democrats, as Mr. President Trump went on Truth Social and ripped apart the Democrats and said that they did this on purpose. They did this to ruin his coronation that's coming up on the 20th. Hey, dumbass. Whenever a president dies, the standard set by the White House is 30 days for the flags to be set at half staff. And all you MAGA nitwits and idiots who are on social media agreeing with this guy and yelling and talking crap about them. Look, do your homework. Stop doing this crap, people. We talk about it on this show. Do your homework. Do your research. R Squared has been in the military. The military handles these funerals. They handle all of the stuff. I'm going to start with R Squared's opinion on this first, because this is just insane that someone would turn this into it's about him. No, it doesn't surprise me of any bit. But this is crazy. Squid?
Yeah, look, first and foremost, to the Carter family, condolences, what have you. Talk about a life well lived, 100 years. My goodness. I mean, obviously we've known for a while his death was imminent because he was in very bad health.
Yeah, 100 years
He was 100 years old. But, it's still sad and it's still difficult for the family, even though they were preparing for this. So, that's the priority here. And Trump doesn't have an ounce of empathy to even care about that. You said, yes, narcissism, sociopathy. I mean, he displays all of these negative qualities. We've been talking about that since his first campaign. And so that's not going to change. It's just who he is. It's his DNA. He doesn't have the ability to offer sympathy. He doesn't have the ability to turn himself off for a minute. So, it's just about ignoring him during something. Like, he's a petulant child. You just have to ignore him and let him stamp his feet and cry himself to tears until he stops. You said it right, both of you. I mean, this is protocol. This is what we do. And, his inauguration is not being delayed. His inauguration is not being changed in any way. Nobody would even notice the flag at half staff because the focus is on the inauguration, where he's going to stand up there, put his hand on a Bible that he doesn't believe in, and take an oath of office and become the next president. And that's not going to change. And if that's not good enough for him, that just tells the American people exactly who he is. Of course, we already knew that and people don't care, but that's all this is. He's a petulant little child, and we shouldn't indulge him by even talking about this.
Ken, your thoughts? Because a lot of people don't know this, but Ken's a kind of a historian. Ken's a guy that's, big on the history of presidents and stuff. And I knew this would have been something that, would have rubbed him the wrong way also.
Oh, it rubs me incredibly the wrong way. Every president in the modern age who has died has been given this dignity. Laying in state, flags at half staff, people saying things like, well, we didn't agree politically, but I respected the man, blah, blah, blah. The joke about President Carter was he's the only man who ever used the presidency as a stepping stone for greater things, and I would agree with that. That's the right. Carter Center, the Habitat for Humanity, just to name a few. People also forget he's a military veteran. He was in the Navy before he became president. People also forget that this is a man who, when there was a nuclear reactor that went critical, he volunteered to go in and shut it down. He put his life on the line to do it, and thank knock on wood, apparently it didn't have any negative effect. He lived to be 100, God bless him. And he was married to the same woman for I don't know how many years. She predeceased him a couple of years ago. But no, this is, again, petulant child, malignant narcissist, as both of you point out. You're absolutely correct as usual. But he's incapable of showing any empathy for anything else, and he should be ignored. I agree with Rob. Let's celebrate President Carter's life. Let's honor his legacy. And I'm trying to find it. I was going to quote Senator Kennedy when he gave up his presidential campaign in 1980 to, ironically, President Carter. He said, to the effect of, the work continues. I forget, and then the last line was, and the dream will never die. And I think that's exactly what we should honor President Carter with. His dream of a better tomorrow shall never die.
A lot of people in the chat. Hello, Chris Gaggy. Hello, Barbara. Hello, Eric. Hello, Alan Bursey for tuning in. 2025 brand new overlays. Here's a funny story someone had told me about President Carter. When Reagan was running against him, one of the things that Reagan spread in his misinformation trail, Reagan tried to make Carter look bad by saying, what kind of person puts the Navy in the middle of the desert when we had these issues going on with terrorists and kidnappings going on. What people don't realize is that the Navy that Carter had put into the desert was the Navy SEALs, which is one of the most prestigious organizations, and they're the first boots on the ground. It doesn't matter where it's at. The Navy SEALs is one of the most prestigious. You want to chime in on that because you're military, squared?
Well, I first of all, I was watching a lot of the coverage today, and I was, always thrilled to see when things go right. And obviously, as you pointed out earlier, the military, they do this. They have people who are, schooled in it and trained in it. And you could see the incredible dignity and everything that went with the handling of the casket, the family, the movement, everything. It was something to be proud of. It's not political in any way. It's not even pro or anti-military. It's not pro or anti-policy. It's really just about propriety. And to watch everything go down so nicely today, that's what we should take away from this. That's the story here. That's the story about it. And Carter, as a veteran, would have every president gets this, whether they served or not. And he's the last one who did really, and he deserved it. You know, he was the only president to serve on a submarine duty, and a nuclear one at that. And he ushered in some incredible military capability. So this was a nice legacy for him. I'm happy for him in that regard.
Great stuff. Great stuff. Moving on, let's get into this. And then we have New Year's Day. We had 2 terrorist attacks on New Year's Day. And we had already here, most of us already had heard who the people were involved, but yet still.
Why the fuck you lying? Why you always lying? Oh my God. Stop fucking lying.
We had these lies and misinformation that were right up there with the lies and misinformation about people eating cats and dogs. And this was the MAGA people, Trump of one, MTG, another one, who would come right out and first thing they were saying, we got to secure our borders. This wouldn't have happened if our borders were this and that. And the information was already out. Even though they're spewing all this misinformation and got their MAGA people all amped up on social media, the news came out. New Orleans, a Texas man, a U.S. Army vet suffering from PTSD who was radicalized by ISIS, possibly by online propaganda, drives into a crowd of people, kills 15 people, injures 23. Was a U.S. citizen, was a vet. Then you have a Cybertruck blown up outside of the Trump Hotel, which I'm real confused about because this guy was a MAGA radicalist, yet he chose a Cybertruck to send his message, and he was parked outside the Trump Towers, but he hated Democrats. This guy also, Mr. Livesberg, Matthew, he was an active Green Beret. He took his life. We talk about the 22 a day with vets. And one of the things we talked about, and R Squared is really going to get into it with Travis Partington on his show about the PTSD. But one of the things we talked about early, many years ago on here, we talked about the 22 veterans a day committing suicide. And one of the things I remember when we talked about this with Ahmed Katayan on 60 Minutes, me and Ken, Ahmed Katayan pointed this out. He says, thank God, I remember he said, thank God these guys and these women are taking their own lives. Yes, it's a tragedy. We don't want to see this. But the last thing you need is a guy to go up in the Texas University Tower with an AR-15 or a sniper rifle. The last thing you need is a guy in Maine to go into a bowling alley after his commanding officer called the sheriffs in Lewiston, Maine, and told them that once you get to this dark place, this is what can happen. This is both of these guys' strategy, military training. They used all of that to carry out these attacks. The Cybertruck attack could have been worse. PTSD is a serious issue, and they're really going to get into it on Oscar Mike Radio in regards to veterans. My thing that I want to touch base on is the danger and the stuff about the misinformation and people. We can't have this. We've talked about it on the show. We beat it like a friggin' dead horse on this show. And just real quickly, I don't want to spend a lot of time because we've beaten this horse enough on this show. But again, we're all going to tell you, stop it. Get the right information. This had nothing to do with the border. And the fact that they tried to make this a border issue out the gate is disgusting. Ken, because he's the immigration guy, I know he must have been pissed on New Year's Day when this information came out, yet they were still pushing even Tom Holman, who's supposed to be handling day one, was pushing, well, this is why we need to secure our borders. No, we don't. This had nothing to do with the borders. This had absolutely nothing to do with the borders, for Christ's sake. Ken, I'm going to let you have this one.
Pissed off doesn't even begin to cover my emotions. This was beyond the pale. I mean, this wasn't, coming in and jumping the gun before we had all the facts, and we had the facts. We knew who these people were. We know the reasons they had done it. Again, there's an old line from Seinfeld, the show from the 90s. It's not a lie if you believe it, Jerry. And that's what these people do. They've gotten themselves so far into their fantasy land, they're actually believing this absolute complete nonsense because it fits their narrative. There was a sci-fi show that started out in the 60s called Doctor Who. And one of the characters once said, one of the Doctor Who characters once said this: the truly stupid, the truly powerful have one thing in common. They don't change their views to fit the facts. They change the facts to fit their views. That's exactly what these people are doing. I mean, again, this wasn't a person who entered without inspection. This wasn't a person who was a trans person, wasn't a liberal, wasn't a Democrat. But none of that mattered because that, look, this is nothing new. I don't know if you guys ever saw the movie The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. The great John Wayne.
We actually have somebody in the chat. Alan Bursey said he feels like releasing this info or misinformation first makes a person seems as they are right. This is why the MAGA people do it.
Oh yeah. It's better be first than accurate. But again, going back to my previous point, there's a line from that movie, great movie, which says if the myth conflicts with the truth, print the myth. That's exactly what they're doing. And it's, what else is new? Wash, rinse, repeat. It's Groundhog Day. Pick your cliche.
It sucks. It really sucks. I square real quick because I can't wait to see you on OMR to talk about
Ken
this.
Said it right. Side. I mean, this is despicable, right? They know the truth, and yet they're putting out something they know to be wholly inconsistent with the truth. And it's not new, like you both said. This has been going on for years. It's exactly who Trump and his minions are. This is their strategy, and people obviously don't care enough about it. I mean, that explains the results, of not just this election, but of related individuals who do the same thing. I mean, it's really a shame. It's going to be the downfall of this country is this very issue that we tolerate the use of misinformation. It's one thing to be less than 100% accurate, right? People can get details wrong, people could rush and miss something. But what we're talking about here is the intentional dishonesty, not reckless, not accidental, not negligent, not even willfully, but we're talking about intention, knowing that you're putting out lies and you do it anyway because you get something you want for it. And the problem is too many millions of people in this country and elsewhere are willing to give them what they want for doing it. That's the real problem here.
So I'm going to ask this. You're a legal guy. You were a JAG officer. I'm going to ask you this, Squid, because we've talked about what makes terrorism, what makes something terrorism. Hold on. Someone's in the chat and says, once it spreads nowadays, it's hard to correct. Great point. This goes into what I'm about to ask. Right. The speed of which info travels now is insane, and they know it. So at which point, Ken and R Squid, but I'm going to ask R Squid because your military dealt with the terrorism things like, at what point do we consider certain types of misinformation as part of a terrorist act of controlling the narrative? Can that be done?
Well, the definition of this isn't terrorism, right? The definition of terrorism is changing governmental policy or changing the mindset of a people through violence, right? It has nothing to do with it's not just changing the belief system or changing the policy. It's using violence against innocent civilians to do it. That's the definition of terror. That's a very basic, but that's the essence of the definition of terrorism. There are obviously multiple components to it. And so simply spreading misinformation by itself would not equate to terrorism. It could be a weapon of terrorism, which it certainly is. They play ideological info wars. And it's certainly not beneath what they would do, but that by itself wouldn't constitute it. It's it's the reason you're doing it. If the reason you're doing it, well, it's not violent though. Well, if you're spreading misinformation to whip up a violent mob, then it could be terrorism, right? So it really is your motivation. Are you trying to use violence to change something? In which case, you very well could be under the definition of terrorism.
Monkey Wrench Wellness, Barbara says, why are Americans so eager to believe the clear BS? I'm going to let Ken answer that for her.
Okay. Here's the problem with Americans. We got the attention span of a gnat. We don't like spending a lot of time going through the details. We like things to be instantaneous and we want them quick. The microwave meal, streaming services, whatever. So therefore, a lot of times these convoluted and very complicated problems, which would take years to understand, and Rob and I disagree on many of them, and we've been talking about it for over 30 years, people come out and say, this is a simple solution. Great, let's go with it. H.L. Mencken once said that for every problem, there's a simple, easy solution that's wrong. And that's what it is. And it hasn't changed since the industrial age. It's a simple solution so people don't have to spend a lot of time thinking, because thinking costs time, money, and effort, and it's a pain in the neck. Okay, that's the simple answer.
Scary, sad stuff. Also in political news, and as I said, you know, this gentleman in the Cybertruck, you know, he was a MAGA radical, and it's just crazy stuff. Also in the political news, Mr. Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, is stepping down after a lot of internal beefing going on in regards to some of this stuff that Trump started, which has now led to Trump making some statements. But this is going to change the political landscape, which means they're going to be electing a new prime minister in Canada. It's going to be really interesting to see, considering Trump takes office on the 20th, and he's been making this discussion about, you know, bringing Canada in as the 51st state and things of that sort. You guys want to touch base real quick on that with Mr. Trudeau, Prime Minister Trudeau stepping down? I'm going to let Ken go first on this.
Again, this is the difference between a parliamentary democracy and a republic democracy. We elect our chief executives for a set period of time, 4 years and 4 years. Canada is a parliamentary democracy, and you stay there until you get voted out. I don't know if you ever heard the old joke about you either die young as a hero or live to see yourself become the villain. And that's exactly what happened to Trudeau. He's stayed around a little too long, and now he's become the villain of his own story, which is unfortunate because he's a very good and competent leader. But that's the nice thing about parliamentary democracies. You know, you're not popular anymore? Bye! New leader, please.
Squid?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing you're seeing in European countries too, France, Germany, elsewhere, that whoever the ruling party is, whether they're more liberal or whether they're more conservative, doesn't matter. People are frustrated with reality. They don't like inflation. They don't like economic problems. And by the way, Europe has significant economic problems compared to us. We've got nothing compared to Europe. But people there are very frustrated. So it doesn't matter which side of the aisle they're on. They're against their incumbent governments. And so that's what Trudeau faced. He's been obviously the incumbent for a while. He's been a good leader, but Canada's facing a lot of problems, including economic problems, and that's what gets people's attention. His party has lost favorability. He, as he announced in his presser yesterday, said he doesn't see a path forward for himself. He believes his party's going to lose the election because that's what happens. You vote for party in a parliamentary system, and the leader of the party becomes prime minister. So his party's going to lose. He's going to get out of the way, let them put up a new fresh face. Maybe they could do better than expected. Who knows? But, you know, I think he's a decent person. I think he's a decent leader for Canada. But the Canadian people have to choose the direction they want their country to go in. You know, that's the way it is.
And moving on in the Trump troubles, Adam Kinzinger, Republican, he sums up MAGA with one word. And here's the funny thing. This was a deep, deep discussion coming from Adam. on this show, we've talked about the fact that, during this previous election that was coming up, anybody who was against President Trump, the MAGA people would be calling these people rhinos. They were throwing this name around. Adam puts a different spin, a deeper spin, and he says, to be honest, MAGA are the true rhinos of the Republican Party. And when you look at that, you really think about what Adam is saying. He's right. He's dead on. And I see R Squared, I'm going to let you take this one and not, because you really talked about this before, but Adam come right out and he says they're the true rhinos. And I'm going to let you break that down.
Yeah, we've been talking about this for years. Trump was never a Republican, right? He hijacked the Republican Party because he thought his path to victory was easier as a Republican than it would be as a Democrat. And I think he was probably right about that because history proved him right, that they were ripe for the picking. And so the MAGA stuff is not consistent and has never been consistent with the modern day Republican Party. If you look at who MAGA is, they're not traditional Republicans. They're not center right. They're not traditional conservatives. Who believe in, certain traditional conservative things like smaller government and fiscal responsibility, and just the opposite, right? They don't fit any of the traditional Republican mantles. So, the entire MAGA movement, they needed to take one of the two political parties over. They chose the Republicans, but they're not Republicans. They're just using the mechanism to, for political purposes. And they don't represent anything about, and that's why I kept saying, as you remember, in all the times we've talked about this and in some of the quarter pieces, we need the Republican Party back. We need the Republicans to get rid of MAGA and go back to being a center-right party, to being a traditional conservative party, so that we can have two traditional parties, a center-left and a center-right party who can figure out how far to go and have good, honest debates over the good of the nation. MAGA doesn't do that. They don't stand for the good of the nation, and they're not about center-right. They're about extremism and noise. They're just a noise machine and nothing more.
Andrea says the MAGA party is the Tea Party 2.0. Ken, you want to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, as Rob has made this point before, and as he's been correct all the times he made it before, MAGA is not the Republican Party. The Republican Party, at least the modern one, I'm talking the post-1930s, 1940s Republican Party, was always, less government, less taxes, strong national defense, very high on individual rights, believe it or not. If you look at the Republican Party from the 50s and 60s, I swear to God, you think you're looking at an advertisement for the ACLU. The idea is we don't want the government in our business. We don't want the government telling us what we can eat, who we can sleep with, what we can do. I mean, swear to God, call up Eisenhower, some of Eisenhower's speeches from the second election. I mean, the guy freaking sounds like me and Rob. I mean, on personal liberty issues. He also sounded, was very about, keeping the defense budget in check. I mean, this guy was a former 5-star general. Today, if he came out and said the exact same thing he said in 1955, today he'd be branded a woke left-wing liberal, Brandonite. Again, the Republican Party sold out for power. Here's the thing you got to remember. We don't have parties in this country. We have two coalitions. We have the Democratic coalition and the Republican coalition. The coalitions, what they do is they take smaller political groups and entities, in most countries called parties, and they bring them together under a banner to work together. That's what we have in this country. We have the Democratic coalition and the Republican coalition, and that's worked out pretty well. Now, the problem is, up until this point, both parties have pretty much managed to keep their extreme wings under somewhat control. Not always, not perfect, but it's always been, hey, you'll get something, but you won't get everything. Starting with the Tea Party, the only thing the inmates started running the asylum, and now they're the tail wagging the dog, and there's nothing anybody can do about it because they're always afraid of being primaried. I mean, for God's sakes, when you got Liz Cheney of all people calling out the MAGA people, how far off the reservation have you gone? Okay, the daughter of Dick Cheney. Okay?
Crazy.
As a good friend of mine once said, this is like the NAACP and the Ku Klux Klan getting together to combat international sex trafficking. Yeah, it makes sense on a certain level that one of these groups, neither one of these groups are pro-sex trafficking, but still they're so diametrically opposed you couldn't get them in the same room together, and that's what happens with And also, I'd like to point out one other thing to all of my MAGA friends out there. Trump did not win a majority of the popular vote. He won a plurality, which makes him president. Not disputing that, but the majority of people in the last election did not vote for Trump. They voted for somebody else. Now, enough of them voted for Kamala Harris. Issue for another day.
Right. Marjorie Taylor Greene's also in the news. And I beat her up enough on this show for calling around and different things, but this time I got to actually support MTG. She was interviewed by Ross Story. Ross Story and MTG, they do have this bad history of taking things that she says and twist it. There's a story out there Ross Story put out saying that she was looking to propose January 6th be established as a national holiday. I saw the actual interview with her and them. She never said it. She never put that out there. When it was asked of her, she chuckled and looked at them and smirked and pretty much said, yeah, we want to make it a national holiday, and laughed and walked away. They asked her PR person, was she serious? And he laughed, knowing the history that her and Ross Story have, because his feeling was, you're going to print whatever you want to print about her anyway because you don't have this history. And that's kind of where they're at. R Squared's shaking his head. What are you hearing on this one? Because I'm hearing that she wasn't serious about this at all. I saw it. I didn't think she was serious at all myself.
About the national holiday, maybe not, because it doesn't matter. There was a recent CODEL, because the representatives of Congress were asked to go and check out the DC prisons or whatever where the January 6th convicts have been held. And for whatever reason, there was a CODEL. She was one of the Republicans that went. There were some Democrats that went. They met with the January 6th convicts. So it was specific to that issue because they weren't meeting with others. She went around hugging and kissing the January 6th convicts, the people that violated the Capitol, the people that assaulted the police officers, the people that desecrated the building, all those disgusting criminals. She went around hugging and kissing them, calling them hostages, promising that Trump was going to pardon them. That's her position on January 6th. I don't give a shit whether she wants to have an official holiday. Maybe they'll vote on that. Maybe they won't. I don't think that would ever clear Congress, quite frankly. That's a step too far. But you know what will happen? They're going to get pardoned and they're going to get celebrated. And that's disgusting. And she's a piece of garbage.
And John Maitland, who's a good friend of mine, he said the same thing. Even though that Ross Story and her have a history and she was tongue-in-cheek, John Maitland said the same thing you are. At the end of the day, she still supports those J6 insurrectionists who broke a law, and that's disgusting. And that should be the real thing here. So that we'll see. It's going to get real interesting because I felt the pardon is coming too once Trump gets into office. And then as we get ready to head out of here, President Trump will not rule out the use of military to take control of Greenland and Panama Canal. I've been saving this one for R Squared, who's a military guy. He knows all about military positioning. He knows about control of what Trump is saying our security risks. And this is why the U.S. needs to get these places back. R Squared, you're a military guy. You've done tours. You were a U.S. I see Ken's like, oh my God, here we go. Go ahead, R Squared.
This is where you go back to the old adage, don't humor the bastard. He's not going to do it. This is noise. He wants you to pay attention to it. This is how he fooled the media. His entire presidency was to throw out these low-hanging fruits that they could chew on and get all excited about. Meanwhile, what he was really doing was more sinister behind the scenes. Don't fall for this crap. He's not going to invade Greenland. It's part of Denmark, who's a close NATO ally. And yes, Denmark could not defeat us in a war, but we're not going to attack a NATO ally. Even Trump is not going to do it. It would be an unlawful order. It would be a war crime to do it. He's not going to do it. Secondly, Panama, While we don't necessarily have a strong alliance with Panama, they're a sovereign country. It would be a war crime to invade them for the purpose of taking over the canal. He's not going to do it. There are safeguards in place. And even if he gets that moron Pete Hegseth in as Pentagon, it's not going to happen. He may make some bluster. He may be saying things like this to try to force a deal. But at the end of the day, this is noise, and we should stop paying attention to it.
Like changing the name of Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America.
Right.
Which was the most stupidest. And I seen all the MAGA peeps all on social media. Yeah, it should be. It should be the Gulf of America. Why? There's more important things happening in this country to worry about the name Gulf of Mexico. There's like this is your main thing as you're getting ready to take office on the 20th?
Yes, because, excuse me, here's the one. The man's not a deep thinker. He doesn't know anything about policy. He doesn't know anything about budgeting. He doesn't know anything about taxes. This is what he can handle. And oh, by the way, okay, and I'm going to defer to Rob to this because this is more of his military law expertise than mine. But I'm pretty sure that Article 5 of the NATO charter applies to anyone who attacks a NATO country. It just doesn't give an exemption for a NATO country attacking each other. So therefore, we could be taking on the entire strength of NATO. And theoretically, NATO could call upon the United States to attack itself because that would be, we'd be obligated. Go file that under confusing orders.
Andrew, Robert says, if you're a politician who wants to be taken seriously, you can't say something, then go back and say, oops, just kidding. Say what you mean what you say. I agree with that.
Yep.
I agree with that.
I agree with that.
As we close down the last topic tonight, I've been talking on this show even before the election, and I had looked at the numbers and looked at how things panned out between the Senate and Congress. And yes, everybody was applauding at the fact that it's a Republican Congress and the Republican Senate. I said to people, hey, yes, the MAGA people are in there, the Republican people, but they said that the House and Senate is controlled by a majority of common sense Republicans. And we've seen this already to the point where I've said Trump isn't going to have an easy 4 years as everybody in MAGA thinks, because there are a lot more common sense Republicans still in the House and Senate. Wall Street Journal just released a video this week explaining why President Trump for the next 4 years might be a lame duck president. In other words, there is a larger contingency in the Republican Senate and Congress and House that are going to make sure that the Trump policies do not get through. They were saying in this...
Hold on, stop it right there. What policies? The man had policies to debate them.
Exactly. But if the policies have to get to the floor to be voted on, they were saying, and they broke it down by the numbers and who's retired, who's left, and who's coming. They were saying that all Trump needs to have happen is just one or two Republicans not show up to vote on that day of being passed. He's not going to make it. In order for him to have his policies passed, he needs to almost have 100% of the Republicans on board. And they're saying, Wall Street Journal says, he doesn't have it. And they're saying that the Republicans that have common sense and the Republicans who aren't MAGA, because we do, that's what we have right now. We have MAGA Republicans, the MTGs and all these, and then we have the common sense MAGAs, the common sense Republicans. And they're saying that the common sense Republicans are going to make these 4 years very hard. And then, but in the end too, we lose out. We still lose out. The Americans still lose out if this even happens, because nothing's going to get done before.
Well, no, maybe that's what you need. Sometimes, you guys have heard the term F around and find out, right? Well, we're now in the finding out stage of the equation. Also, during your point, has anyone bothered to look at the current division of the United States House of Representatives?
Yes, this video shows that. This video shows all of that, breaks it all down. It's a great video. If you haven't seen it, go to Wall Street Journal on YouTube and check it out.
Barely got elected a speaker. You're right, because they need every single Republican to show up and vote positive on every single issue.
Yeah.
The House of Representatives would have a difficult time agreeing on the color of an orange on a good day. And the House of Representatives has had a good day since Reagan was president. So this is going to be a nightmare. I don't think first of all, what are his policies? Name me one major policy. And I'm not talking about invading Greenland or renaming the Gulf of Mexico. I mean, a substantial policy. Where does he stand on the our U.S. military capability? Do we need to relook at the way we handle wars? Do we need to go from a division setup to a brigade setup? Do we think we need more? Are we looking more towards heavy infantry, or is because of the advance of drones reshape the battlefield? We need more light mobile units. What about China? What kind of naval ships should we be building to combat the growing threat of China? How are we going to develop international currency regulations regarding cryptocurrency, moving money around? How are we going to deal with the growing healthcare crisis in this country, which still has a kind of way? What about the wealth gap? What are we going to do about the spiking prices of food? Those are all really important issues, which unfortunately I don't. Maybe R Squared does. He's been quiet. Yet usually means he's been thinking.
Hold on. Andrea Fernandez just dropped the actual numbers in the chat. Right now, it's 215 Democrats to 219 Republicans. The majority he needs is 218. It's like a 4-person margin. In other words, just like we were just saying.
Right. 4 people. And remember, okay, first of all, it's four person margin. That's assuming, of course, since the one that every Republican votes 100% with their party. Show me a bill where Republicans have voted 100% of the time with their own party. Doesn't happen. Up until the Hastert rule, it was very common for a speaker to go in and peel off votes from the other party to help pass legislation. But, thanks to Hastert, which may he burn in hell, the Republicans used to say, no, you got to have a majority within the party. Now it's going to sink themselves because now you're giving every Republican, people you've never heard of, incredible amount of party withhold their vote until they get something. They may want to shake them down for more money for their district or, a Codel or whatever.
Anything you want to add to that, R Squared, before we get ready to get out of here? Thank you for joining, Angel. I see Angel Fernandez. Angel Robinson's in the chat, DJ Angel.
No, I mean, look, the first order of business will be voting on his cabinet picks. And there are a number of highly questionable, highly unqualified individuals. And that'll be the first order of business to see what kind of support they get. Because, Majority Leader Thune just said the other day that he believes Hegseth has the votes to be confirmed. Well, Hegseth should never be anywhere near the Secretary of Defense's office. Never. We've talked about before. I'm not going to spend time on it again. He's wholly unqualified in every possible way to be Secretary of Defense. And yet, according to the Majority Leader, he believes he has the votes. And the Democrats aren't voting for him. So that means he has to have, pretty good control of Republicans. So let's see what happens on these votes. Let's see if Tulsi Gabbard gets voted in. Let's see who some of these other clowns, obviously there are some people, the president should get most of the time that we should default to the president for selecting their cabinet, but not when you pick a calamity of clowns. That's when the Senate has to do its job, advise and consent and say, no, not qualified, not getting anywhere near, the Pentagon or the whatever. And so let's see what happens. Then I'll pass judgment.
All right, cool. Let's get ready to get out of here. These are the people that have supported me. Those are the beanies. But as you guys saw me wearing a Sinister One t-shirt, these are the t-shirts that you're going to start seeing popping up on here. Also, the shows I produced. Drafting the Circuits will be back in February when Daytona comes back. Oscar Mike Radio is on Thursday night. R Squared will be with Oscar Mike Radio. This week, they're going to be recording or going live, so I'll be making sure to share that. You Are the Star karaoke every first Friday. Stay Young Fitness. Lionel Boogs Young. We also have the Culture Corner event that's taking place on January 10th. We've got Turnbuckles and Spilt Liquor tonight at 9:30. Tomorrow, Wednesday, we have Homeland Hero Salute 100th episode. Free Warrior Yoga until January 13th. Barbara is in the chat. Monkey. I think she's in the chat. She was in the chat. Oh, she's still in the chat. If she can, she could drop her links. Monkey Wench Wellness. February 7th, Veana Marie will be performing at the Humbleness Showcase. And then the Locks 30th anniversary tour. Going to be having Mr. Melodic on the show. That show takes place on the 22nd. And then my artist, Veana Marie, is nominated for Best Female Hip Hop Artist at the Remy TV Influence Awards, which will take place in April. And then don't forget, people, BAT buses are free through June 30th. This is provided by grant monies across the nation, so take advantage of that. And then Run the Home Base takes place July 26th at Fenway Park. This is a 5K run, 9K run. Support veterans' mental health. This is something that these guys are going to be talking about. And that's it. That's all we got tonight. I'm going to let my guys go around the horn here. New season. Margaret's in the chat. Margaret says, thank you for my shirt. All right, Margaret, you're going to have to get a picture to me so we can put this up on the banner. I'm going to have everybody with shirts on the banner. I'm going to start with our squad saying his goodbyes tonight.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. Good show. Good way to start the year. Plenty more to come, so stay tuned.
Ken Diesel?
We'll thank all of our listeners and viewers, all 12 of you. Happy New Year for those of you who celebrate. Be safe, be warm, be informed. We'll see you next month.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Turnbuckles and Spilt Liquor podcast takes place at 9:30. SpongeBob, do me a favor. Take us home.
See you next Tuesday.
Thank you for listening to The Booth on Hoobazoo and HatcherRadio.com. Please follow the Facebook page and subscribe to the podcast at Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. The Booth is a Sinister One production hosted by Sinister One.
I've got to start hanging out with friends that are a little more intelligent and understand politics and stuff. It's just that I'm up on this level up here, and all my friends are down here. Me, nah. You guys, nah. Maybe a little more down in here. Screw you guys, I'm going home.
I smoke, I drink, I do my thing. These bitches hating, so you know I got to make it plain. Don't do cocaine, but your chick, my main. We stick together, true forever, yeah, you know we bang. I miss those days, which was easy. If only I make it, keep this shit on repeat. Now that I done upgraded, I've been upstate, and y'all think I'm playing. And I got a hit now for these weak assholes who think I ain't slaying. Try me, and I'll probably end up laughing, cause I never back down. I'm that chick with a clean ass whip, I don't need that shit, I got my own now. I get hurt, I get tired of fussing, fighting, guess I gotta crack down. Don't mess with me, cause on everything, I'ma have to bring the whole city out.
WHOOBAZOO, that's Hoobazoo.com. Enter website, enter website, enter website, enter website.